everybody please check to make sure that you're muted right now, guys? I don't know where this loud sounds like somebody's sitting in a toilet. Everybody, Jackie, Morrow, Mark, Deborah, caller number 3, Kimberly, everybody, mute. Let's have one big mutiny.
Mine says mute already.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just have to live with it. It is 7:01. Time is flying. We're going to Carol. Dr. Holland is going to get us started, and welcome everybody. And
okay.
We'll get started.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to welcome everyone to the Professional Education to Publication Workshop. I am a junior fellow and a dissertation chair. Eric, you want to just introduce yourself quickly and say a little bit about yourself?
My name is Eric Bean, and I am the Associate Research Chair at the Center for Leadership Studies and Educational Research. Welcome, everybody.
And we want to start with a few introductions of everyone who's here with us. However, we would like you to limit it to just a little discussion of your field of study and your name. And I'm going to come back to the purpose after that, if that's okay. We only have a few minutes for the introduction, so we would like you to try to limit your comments. We'll start with Jackie Morrow.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yep.
Okay, my name is Jackie Marrow. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My area for my dissertation that I'm presently working on is educational leadership as it relates to Christian school culture.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Caller number 3, user 3. We would like you to introduce yourself. Call in user 3. Can you hear me? Okay. Next will be Andrea Aiden. Introduce yourself. If you're muted, that's okay. I'll give you another second. Unmute. We need to unmute. What about Mark? Mark, can you hear me?
I can.
You can? Please introduce yourself briefly. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mark McCaslin. How you guys doing?
Hi, Mark. Glad to have you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Mark needs no introduction, everybody.
Yeah. Does everybody know Mark? If you don't, just give us a little brief description of what you do, just in case some people don't know.
Well, I'm Mark McCaslin. I'm the Dean of Research and Scholarship here, and I actually try to make sure that people like Eric and Carol are doing really good work all the time. So, actually, no, I really enjoy this community of practice. I think that this community of scholarship that we've created, I think, is something that's continuing to grow and develop, and this is part of it. And I love these kind of workshops, so I'm going to back up and let you guys go to work, but looking forward to listening in.
Thank you. Andrea, can you hear me? Call in user 3, can you hear me?
I think I might be caller user number 3, Kent Van Cleve, because I don't see my name up at the top.
Okay.
I typed it in when I came in. I have a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, but the area that I'm the most interested in is student success. I've been studying what it is that makes a student successful for 30 years and gotten pretty good at it. So I want to publish in that area.
That's wonderful. Well, we're in a similar area, but we'll talk about that more later. I don't want to spend too much time right now. Deborah, would you introduce yourself?
Yes. I'm sorry, there's 2 Deborahs. So I'm That's not me. Okay, I'm Deborah Levin. I just walked the stage on October 21st with the Doctorate of Management and Organizational Leadership, so I'm brand new.
Congratulations.
And,
Congratulations.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm so excited. So I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my dissertation was on how leaders build trust with virtual teams by using communication technologies. So that was my study, and I want to do some additional work in the study.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I saw Kent Morrow. What happened to Kent? Kent, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to enter Kent Van Cleve?
Well, I think I'm user number 3. I don't see my name up there.
Oh,
at the
okay.
top.
Well, I see your name now. It's KC. So you just introduced yourself, didn't you? You're interested
Yes,
in
I did.
Student success.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you. You're on. It looks like you're here twice, but that's okay. Jackie Morrow, did you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you introduce yourself already?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Andrea Aiden. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to discuss the purpose a little bit at this point on slide number...
Dr. Harlan, do you
Yes.
see Tamika Ledbetter?
I don't see you. Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Greetings from the great state of Alaska. I recently completed my oral defense last month, and I now will have a Doctor of Management and Organizational Leadership, and so I view myself as a leadership practitioner, very interested in women's studies, women in leadership, and I did my doctoral dissertation on the no-choice volunteer leader, and essentially it was a study of pastors' wives, a hermeneutic phenomenological study.
Excellent.
Congratulations. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And there's a Deborah Sandberg.
And Michael Lindquist. Michael, if you want to quickly introduce yourself, please feel free to do so. If not, we'll move on.
Okay. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the purpose. We have developed this workshop to provide more opportunities for both School of Advanced Studies faculty and also students to utilize the subject area matter expertise as we engage in conversations and move forward toward disseminating best practices via publication. We plan to support the utilization of other means of publication using practitioner journals and periodicals rather than peer-reviewed journals. There are other avenues to publications which can build author notoriety, and sometimes demands on academic journals are such that you have to develop a research study rather than write an article. And so we would like to look at supporting you through that process. Did you want to add anything to that, Eric?
Yeah, well, it's very important to understand that, the trade publications and the freelance markets, if you will, still have a peer review process. And but typically that peer review process is done, in-house with the editorial staff. So, and we'll cover more of that as the workshop progresses today. Just want to remind everybody again, because we're really getting a lot of background noise, if you could mute your line, we would greatly appreciate it.
Okay. When we did our introductions, we were thinking we would share some of the results from the survey.
Yes.
Okay.
17 people filled out the survey of the 25 who had registered to participate. And some pretty interesting results. As far as subject matter expertise goes, it looks like that the most popular area was in technology. So technology about 50% of the respondents, actually, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. It was leadership. 50% of the respondents believe that their subject matter expertise is leadership. And that kind of makes sense because that represents the doctoral degrees that University of Phoenix offers the most. And then I'd say about another 20% is in business, another 10% is in technology, another 10% in secondary education, and another 10% in higher education. That makes up our list of the 17 that had completed the survey.
Okay.
So that was pretty interesting. So we're going to try to get you guys together because we have your email addresses and your subject matter expertise. And working with like-minded professionals, you'll be able to help each other understand the process and support each other after this workshop.
Right. As we move to the next slide,
Yep.
because can you do that for me, Eric? I don't have the opportunity to touch it. The next one. Now, what we can do for you as a result of this workshop is we know that you're interested in how we can help. And what we envision is that by the end of this workshop, you will have completed an article that can be published. You have selected a publication, developed your article based on the requirements of the publication, and submitted the article. And as Eric just said, we want to partner you with another individual so that you won't feel lonely out there doing the research, developing the article, and writing the article. And so, I will share with you later some of the information I found when I did a little bit of research today on some of the websites we're going to introduce you to.
Excellent.
Next slide. Number 5. Okay, so in November, you'll have time to ask questions about the process and check on how your current effort is on track, and we can also problem solve issues together, and you can share information with the rest of the participants because as you go to look at some of the websites, sometimes it's difficult to find information. It's easier on some, so if you find some information, you can share that. And again, of course, our attention to managing our time so we can spend time on our project to get it published will be the determining factor.
Exactly. And let me just say, too, that, many of you are so used to producing a 20-page, manuscript or a 12-page manuscript for maybe some other peer-reviewed publications. But the trade publications and the freelance markets are a lot shorter as far as the manuscripts go. Typically I think you're going to find in the neighborhood of anywhere from 1,500 words to 2,500 words. So it's definitely a different process that you might not be used to. And as a matter of fact, out of the 17 people that took the survey, I think only less than 5% said that you had any trade publication experience. So, keep that in mind as we move forward.
And Eric, the site that I looked at today, it's between 1,000, I think it's 1,000 words to 2,000, no more than 2,000.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And that was the higher education, right?
Yes, Higher Education Journal. So I'm going to ask that you go ahead and continue on slide 6, if you don't mind.
You bet.
Thank you.
So the process always starts with the markets first. You could have the most fantastic article in the world. I like to tell people you could hear violins after you read it, but you can't get that attached to it because it's a business process. It's an administrative task in order to get an article published. So you've got to put on your administrator's hat, and you've got to think strategic. So, earlier on the Center for Leadership Studies and Educational Research website, Ryan Rumminger, a colleague of mine, and Fiona Suzanne published a number of articles to help introduce the concept of trade publications and what they are and how to identify them, and reputable publications, markets that you might be able to get paid for, or write on their websites, and legitimate markets. And so you're going to want to be sure to read those. We will send you links to those after this workshop, so stay tuned, for those as well. But the truth is that if you're looking for a legitimate market, these trade publications will be available in the University of Phoenix online library. So, for example, if marketing or business is your subject matter expertise or leadership, you can find a number of trade publications that are in the University of Phoenix online library, and then just searching for them. And then you always want to contact them for their guidelines. Usually they'll have guidelines in a PDF format, where you can go to the website and check them out online. And, the guidelines are typically pretty rigorous. They don't always follow APA style, by the way. These trade publications might follow what we call Associated Press style. They might follow MLA style. They might not have any style whatsoever other than their own particular style. They might tell you that they want the word percent spelled out, so that you've got to spell out the word percent. They might tell you that you might have to have some sort of a thesis in the first paragraph, then you've got to be sure that you do that. So I like to say it's what goes on at church. When they stand, you stand. When they sit, you sit. Whatever they tell you to do, you want to follow the process as closely and as rigorously as possible. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. Stand by. So these practitioner periodicals are typically geared to the profession more so than the academy, but they can include targeting both or either, and might be published daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually. Practitioner publications can often be under the guise of an association. Marketing News is a nonprofit association. The School Library Journal, Diverse Issues in Higher Education, and journalistic titles. Now, in my neck of the woods, we have Crane's Detroit Business, we have Crane's New York Business. You might not be able to see this underneath the icons, but Business Leadership, Wired, Entrepreneur Magazine, all of these kinds of magazines that you can probably get at a local Barnes & Noble if you're lucky to have a Barnes & Noble still open in your area. So these are what we consider to be the trade publications, and that you'll want to get their guidelines in your hand. So Practitioner Publications, again, just to refresh, because we want to make sure that you fully understand that they differ from the Academy in that most do not use a blind peer review process, but are reviewed by a managing editor and editorial team in general. The practitioner publication often seeks manuscripts via their detailed guidelines that specify how much freelance work they accept, if you will. For example, you're not going to be able to write for, obviously, Sports Illustrated or Car and Driver, because those magazines have their own in-house staff, and they very rarely accept freelance work. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, this percentage, I believe, is key to your success, that you want to work with a practitioner publication that accepts 25% or higher freelance work, and that percentage will be shared inside their guidelines. Now, that's not to say that you can't get an article accepted if they only accept 15 or 10%. You might be able to still get accepted. It just means that they're highly competitive and that you're competing against all the other publications. Now, another very important concept to understand regarding any market, and I want to make sure you guys walk away with this. Write this down. Take this note. Be sure you look over the last 12 months to 2 years of that publication. Look at every feature article, every title. You don't want to submit an article that repeats any one of those feature article titles unless you believe that your article offers a significant spin, a different angle, or a different concept. But a lot of times, the reason why newer writers get rejected is because they really don't look at that magazine very carefully, and you're supposed to look at it very carefully. Look at that website. Look at that magazine. Study how the feature articles are published. Do they rely more on pictures, or do they rely more on text? If they rely more on pictures, even if you have a doctorate in leadership or a doctorate in education, technology, they might be relying more on photographs for that story than they will on the article. And many times, you as the freelance writer, you're going to have to supply those photographs, so you're going to have a good camera and stage those pictures. So just something to be aware of as we do more of a deep dive into the process. Stand by as I switch the slides. Okay, so there are mass-produced publications that you can pick up at Barnes & Noble. You could also go online. The most famous one is called Writer's Market by Writer's Digest. And this is a company that's based, I believe, in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. And surprisingly, they've been publishing an annual compendium, if you will, of probably about 50% of all the magazines and trade publications across the U.S., who the editor is, how to submit your material to them, what they're looking for, and how much they'll pay per word. 10 cents a word, 25 cents a word, $1 a word. Wow, it just goes up, right? So Writer's Market, the last time I checked, will set you back about $50, $60 for the hard copy or the paperback edition. You'll also be able to get, maybe for $70 or $80, the website companion where you can search for more markets as well. So as I sit here, if you're looking at leadership, and half of the group here that filled out the survey said that that was their subject matter expertise, my guess is that you're going to be looking at least 200 to 250 potential markets that you could submit your material to. But you've got to find those markets and do your research. Now, another great avenue, and I used to work directly with the gentleman, Len Fulton, who started this publication some 53 years ago. It's called the International Directory of Little Magazines and Small Presses. So just to give you an idea of how comprehensive this market guideline is, they actually list University of Michigan's Red Cedar Law yearbook as a potential market to submit your freelance work to. Now, of course, in order to submit your freelance work to the Red Cedar Law at University of Michigan, you're probably going to have to know a lot about University of Michigan, some sort of meaningful contribution to University of Michigan, and some new contribution, and you better look at the Red Cedar Law over the last 5 to 10 years in order to make that unique contribution. So that's just one example. It's a very thick book. It's probably, 300 to 400 pages. It's a great resource for all sorts of small markets. Hey, if you're into poetry, it probably has markets there too. But obviously, you're going to want to look for markets that expand your subject matter expertise. So be sure to check out Writer's Market from Writer's Digest Books, and check out the International Directory of Little Magazines and Small Presses. I don't think you'll be disappointed in the investment of either one of those publications. Or if you're lucky enough to find them, if they're not shrink-wrapped at a Barnes & Noble, you could probably find a market in there as well. So if guidelines aren't readily available, don't submit. It's actually folly to submit an article to any publication without looking at the guidelines. And then there is a little bit of a ceremonial process where many of these publications expect you to know the name of the editor, and you'll have to include, just a short cover letter. But if you list the name of the editor incorrectly, that shows the current editor that you're not currently up to date on that market and you haven't done your research. So be sure to check that out. Check out the markets very carefully as you progress. And we'll want you to try to do that over the next 30 days before we rejoin each other later on in November. All right? Let me go to the next slide. Stand by. All right, so now I'm going to turn to some quick manuscript advice. This is just practical. It's common sense. And, from people who have, typically published in the trade publications. So for the complete manuscript, you'll either be asked to do a query letter, which is still important. Now, and I'm going to explain what a query letter is after this, so stand by on that. But one will likely need to a simple cover letter properly addressed to the editor. Make sure it's all up to date. Obviously, no typos. Spell check your work. And in some cases, you might go via traditional mail, or you might go electronically. But failure to acknowledge, again, the current staffers could result in rejection. Now, the voice above all is the draw. And even your voice in your cover letter, you want to maintain that third person, authoritative voice. And never tell an editor that this would be a great piece. Don't editorialize. The editors know who their readership is, and just simply say that you're submitting to the particular section, and with the name of the title of the article and the section that it should belong to. All right? And I'll move on here. Stand by. So all publications are looking for solutions. They're looking for advice to meet demands of their growing markets, their new customers, technological fixes, hacks, if you will, or they want pieces about grassroots and community efforts that individuals in the field have experienced, pieces that speak to immediacy. So, several of you indicated that you're newly minted doctors. Congratulations. You may be able to turn your dissertation into one or two articles. Can you turn a portion of your dissertation into a technological fix? Do you have an instrument that you use to measure something, and you could actually write an article just based on that instrument and how that can help the field of leadership in technology and higher education? Was there a portion of your dissertation that yielded some very interesting results that the community would want to know, that you could digest readily and serve up? When we talk about the word immediacy, we think of contemporary issues that are going on right now in leadership, contemporary issues in technology, higher education. Again, these are the fields that you told us that you're a subject matter expertise in. And then remember that third person authoritative voice. You want to avoid I's and I's, I feel, I think. They're not interested in what you feel. They're not interested in what you think. Typically, they're interested in those solutions. They can tell if you've looked over their publication and that you're intimately involved with the layout of their publication. So those are some quick manuscript advice. And in the last 10 minutes of today's workshop, you'll have plenty of chance to ask questions. So do stand by as we continue. All right, so the query letter is something that many newer trade publication or freelance market writers may not be familiar with. It's a one-page letter to sell a story idea. And but you've got to be very careful with it, because in this one-page letter, not only do you have to sell the story idea, but you're also selling your ability to write and be creative and connect to the editor who will be reviewing that one-page letter. So, as the slide shows, the art of writing a query letter is generally one that combines a proposal with the writing voice typically found in the periodical. So you'll want to be meeting the writing tone. It's crucial for success. Don't editorialize. Again, don't say that this is a wonderful article and that your readers will love it. Sell them on the concept directly with that third-person voice. Stand by. So selling the idea, just to recap, that's already been covered. Obviously, that's going to lead to a fast rejection. That's why it's recommended, again, to go over that periodical over the last 12 months, 2 years, ideally, right? Read and reread. Get to know that publication intimately. When we think of the style of the manuscript or the style of the query letter, think about this. Does the periodical use headers? Do they indent frequently? Some periodicals may indent every sentence as a new paragraph. They don't follow APA style. They follow their own style. And again, you want to mimic that style. So the query letter, is very important. It represents probably maybe 25% of all the publications that might accept freelance work. They don't want to see, these are publications that do not want to see your complete manuscript. They want to see your ability to sell that one-page query letter. And also, again, if images are required, don't rely on the publication to supply you those images. You're going to have to go out there and you're going to have to stage or set up those images. I remember way back in 1991 when I got my first paid freelance article published in a national aquarium magazine. There was a gentleman that published a brand new book on reef keeping, and he sold 1 million copies of that book. And he also had a company that was selling reef keeping equipment, so he could make money off of the equipment also, mentioned in the book. The fascinating part about this is when I looked over the book, I saw that the book had typos, spelling mistakes. It was not properly edited, but yet he sold 1 million copies. And the lesson, what that told me, just like it can tell you, is that you don't need anybody's permission to succeed. You've been through the doctorate, even recently, or maybe in the past, as an SAS chair, or maybe you're working on your master's degree and you're taking this workshop, but you don't need anybody's permission to succeed. But what's very important to know is that you want to sell a fresh idea. And so back in 1991, I challenged the editor of that book because he said that everybody would be better off if they would hook their computers up to their aquariums. Yes, he did back in 1991. Can you believe it? But I thought, you know what? Just because you could, and we will someday be able to hook our computers up to our aquariums, that doesn't mean that you understand the water conditions. You still can't make up for that understanding. You need to know about nitrates and nitrites and ammonia. And so what I did is I took a picture of my aquarium back then, and I ran my keyboard from my 1991 computer in front of my aquarium, and I took a picture of it, and I staged as if it was set up to my computer. Then I took a picture of a fully automated camera, and I took a picture of a manual camera, because I was trying to make a comparison that just because you have an automatic camera doesn't mean that you're a good photographer. And then I took a picture of an old-fashioned record player, which are now becoming popular again, and I took a picture of a CD player back then, and I said just because you have a CD player doesn't mean that the music quality is better. And that's how I sold them on the idea of my first paid article. And I had to take the pictures, and I sent them the pictures, and that was taken via a 35mm disposable camera back then. And then 13 months later, after my article got accepted, I got my first check for $200. But I want to give you another practical example, one that's more related to your subject matter expertise. About a year prior to that, back in 1990, I had found myself unemployed, and I was living with my older brother and his wife for the summer in their Atlanta apartment. And my expertise at that time was marketing and marketing communications. So my older brother said to me, you know, I have an idea of how you can stimulate your resume and get more job opportunities. You need to publish an article, he told me. And he said to me, you need to publish an article at that last marketing company you work for to offer advice to marketing professionals. So I said to my brother, let me get this straight. I said to Jeff, you want me, an unemployed marketing executive, to write an article to employed marketing executives telling them how to do their job better. And my older brother said, that's exactly what I want you to do. And then he told me, why don't you look at that American Marketing Association, look at their guidelines, and see if you can come up with a new idea to submit to them. And so I did. I got their guidelines, and I came up with an article on step-by-step procedures for marketing departments so that they can do their job better internally to deliver a marketing project. And I called it something like, implementation supplier steps. And I sent this to the American Marketing Association, and 6 months later I got a call from the editor of the publication, and he said to me, Eric, we've got your article in front of us, but we're missing a 2x2 black and white photo of yourself. We'd like you to send it to us immediately. And this is just prior to the internet. And of course I did. Another 6 months later, because it can take up to 13 months to get an article published, my article was published with the Marketing News magazine on the top of page 46. I tell everybody I'll never forget it. There I was with my wire glasses, my big giant wire glasses from 1990, and my mustache. And next to my name it said, Eric Bean specializes in marketing articles. That's right. I specialized in them. That was the only article I ever had published. The important thing to note, though, is that they published the article 100% verbatim. If you do a good job looking over your markets, they're not going to really change the article that much because they know that you've got the voice down. The only thing that they changed was the title of my article. And you know what? They made me look better. And here's the new title. They changed it to Teamwork Delivers a Clear Implementation Document by Eric Bean. And of course, today, they don't even use the word implementation. They call it SOP, or Standard Operating Procedures. So that's just a quick little anecdote I wanted to share with you on my success. And if I can be successful, I know that everybody taking this workshop can be successful too. It just has to go back to being practical, doing your homework, and doing your research first. So what are the next steps? With such an attention to these query or complete manuscript details, one will stand a much higher chance of preparing a successful practitioner publication. Based on the emails that you provided and entered into the workshop, Dr. Holland and we're going to send you all the other people, their contact information, their subject matter expertise. We're going to ask you to reach out to them. I'll start a dialogue with everybody's email address, and then we want you guys to share with each other. Now, I understand that you may think, well, wait a minute, if I'm sharing with another subject matter expert like me, we're going to be competing with each other. That's true to a certain degree, but I'm here to tell you, I'm here to assure you that the journalistic highway is absolutely enormous. Now, it is true that with the advent of the internet, some magazines have dwindled, but some have actually come back and paired their magazines with websites to provide a complete package. And then, of course, there are literally hundreds and thousands of websites that offer freelance markets too. So while you may think that you're competing, and you are, with like-minded subject matter expertise such as yourself, you can help each other understand the markets and share with each other the guidelines that you find. Because that can be a lengthy process. It may take you 2 weeks to find the right guidelines and actually get them in your hands. And then you've got to be thinking, how am I going to take my dissertation, compartmentalize it? Am I working on a current article? 11% of you said that you were working on a current trade publication article right now. So Dr. Holland and I presume that means that you understand that these are shorter articles, 1,200 to 2,500 words, and that you're already, kind of out there and you've immersed yourself. So this is the way the progression is going to occur over the next month to help you. And number 2 is to obtain the guidelines. Number 3 is to prepare to re-engage. And don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to ask in just a few minutes if you've got a burning question. You'll be preparing to re-engage with the next PEP workshop in November to share your progress. We'll then discuss publication rights in that workshop too. But briefly, you never want to sell your work under what's called all rights. If you make sure you read the copyright material, because all publications are going to have you sign a copyright agreement. If you sign under all rights, that means you're going to give away your rights 100% to that publication, and you can't sell the concept of that article again. And by the way, when I mean sell, selling doesn't mean just to for-profits or non-profits that pay you. Selling means that even a trade publication or a non-profit or even an educational publication, if they buy it under all rights, even though they're not paying you, that means you cannot do anything with it, but they're free to do anything they want with your article again. They could resell your article a second or a third time. Even they could have a best of the year edition of their journal or publication and not pay you or have to even acknowledge you again. So make sure that when you do sell your material, even if it's a book or an article, you're always selling under first rights. And that gives both of you the same right to resell your material again and again. Seconds rights, by the way, means that you're selling a previously sold article and that they're aware that it was previously published. That's under second rights. So number 4, the goal as a reminder, is to strive to identify your subject matter expertise. And there were 10 of you. There were 10 of you. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems like there's a question. I'm sorry to interrupt, but someone keeps saying, what was your question?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's not a question. It's just background noise.
Okay. So, there were 10 of you that didn't fill out the survey that were registered. So if you haven't, please be sure you do so that we can make sure that we can try to pair you up. So now, for the last 15 minutes, we'll open up the workshop to your questions, and nothing is out of the limits. This is your workshop. We want you to be successful. Dr. Holland and I are here, and so we've got, the floor is yours now. You can, feel free to unmute and speak up, or if you want to post a text question, I think you could do that too.
I think Andrea had a question.
I don't. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Well,
okay.
I see one from Michael Lindquist. Michael,
Okay.
I hope you're doing well this evening. Michael and I have seen each other at many workshops over the years. I know Michael has presented for University of Phoenix on many occasions. Saw him at ILA in Brussels. He asked, his question is, should your VITA accompany your query letter? That's a great question. And the answer is, for most cases, you probably should include your VITA, because part of the query letter, by the way, and I'm so glad you raised this, Dr. Lindquist, because part of the query letter is not only selling your writing, but that you're the right person to write that manuscript for them, that you've got the background, that you're on the pulse of the immediacy of what's going on, that you're a leader of the conversation that's going on in the community. And so, yes, your resume is important. Now, does that mean you have to have a doctorate degree, or that you have to show them that, you've been published in many scholarly publications? The answer to that is no, because they're not typically looking for your scholarly publications. So when I say to include your resume, in my opinion, for trade publications, I would get rid of that long list of those journal articles unless you really believe that you absolutely need that to sell. Because the long list of journal articles might leave a bad taste in the trade publication mouth, because they might be thinking that your voice is too stiff, too academic for these markets. And so you want to be sure to loosen up your voice, not be as stiff, but still maintain that third-person voice, where applicable. Most of these publications will not be accepting first person, which is my guess. Will we receive a copy of the PowerPoint? Dr. Holland and I would be delighted to share the PowerPoint with all of the participants. Yep. Jennifer James had a question. You're welcome. That question was from Andrea, by the way. Jennifer James, should the same voice be used to query as the piece? Generally it is. That's a great question, Jennifer. Yeah, the one-page query letter, and again, by the way, only submit the query if the guidelines say that that's what they want. A lot of these publications, they will say, if we don't know you and you haven't previously published with us, we want you to submit a query letter. So that's a great question. But yeah, typically the voice should mimic it, because you're trying to sell them that you're creative, that you're on the pulse of new material, and that you've got a sense of immediacy. And then so Jennifer was thanking us, and you are most welcome. We've got a question from Deborah L. What is the average compensation for accepted submissions? And on average, how long does it take to get published if the article's of acceptable quality to the editor? Another, just a superb question. When we're looking at the paid markets, from my typical experience, the paid markets are, if they offer payment, are typically going to run in the area of $200 to $500. Now, it's possible that, that it might be higher, but I'm going to say on average, and it depends on your subject matter expertise. If you're looking at a publication like Wired or Entrepreneur, they might pay up to $1,000. And of course, the guidelines will indicate, to me, the payment is just a bonus. The publication on your CV will last a lifetime. And I always like to tell people, my mantra is getting an article published is something that no one can ever take away from you. Now, as far as the length for acceptance, it can be a very lengthy process. You have to have a lot of patience. But, you know, if you've ever gotten a journal article published, you know how long that can take. It could take up to 3 to 4 months before you even hear back. Typically, if you don't hear back after 3 or 4 months, you can send a follow-up letter asking them, and you just very politely ask them, where is the piece in the publication process? That's all you have to do. You know, you just simply say, hi, my name is Eric Bean. I submitted an article on August 1st, 2018. I haven't heard anything since. Can you please tell me where the article is in the publication process? Thank you very much for your time. You know, and so these publications, unlike maybe some of the stiff, staunch, you know, typical academic journals, they'll probably be a little bit more responsive. Not always, but maybe I'd say a little bit more responsive to you. So it could take 3 to 4 months, and like the journals, they might respond back and they might say, you know, we like your article, but can you give me more information on this? We don't like this source. This source seems outdated. Can you give me a better statistic here? That statistic was 2 years old. We'd like to have a newer statistic. You know, that's what you're looking at. And then if it's for a special edition, a lot of times, I should say many times, these markets might also give you a what they call a press release calendar. The press release calendar will tell you that they might be doing a special edition on leaders in the month of October, or they might be doing a special edition on technology in the month of February. Obviously, if your piece is slated for that special edition, you're going to have to wait for that article to get published. And by the way, the professional term, which many people get confused about, it's called a presentation date. It's not a publication date. It's a presentation date for your work to get published. And that presentation date could take 12 months, could take 13 months. When I was doing a lot of freelance for my national aquarium magazines, it was typically 13 months to 15 months that I would see my final piece published. So just bear that in mind. Let's see. I'm currently in the DTP workshop. And let's see. That is the dissertation to publication workshop. I'm presuming I'm writing an article for a management journal. If accepted, do I need to seek permission to use some of the data from the article? Well, when it comes to permissions, you know, always do your best to get all the sign-offs that you need, you know, beforehand, before you even submit your article for publication consideration. You know, make sure that you do have permission for any of the material that you might port over into a trade publication or a freelance, you know, journalistic publication. You know, that it's very important, because you don't want to compromise. If the article gets published, especially say if they're paying you, that means you've earned an income from it, from material that you didn't properly cite, and that could you know, give you a little blemish. So we don't want any blemishes on anybody. So just even if you get something in an email saying, yeah, you've got my permission to use the data set. Yes, you have my permission to, you know, resell that part to another publication. Many times people will offer you permission because they want to see their citation or reference in the article. But bear in mind, many trade publications do not even print the references or the citations. So if you're going to, you know, it depends on the publication. If they show in-text citations, you know, that's good. Some might not even show any citations whatsoever. We've got another question from Deborah Sandberg. Does our background and experience go into the cover letter? The background and experience, you know, should go into the cover letter, but be brief and be clear and be concise. You don't want a 5-page resume. You don't want a 2-page cover letter. 1-page cover letter for most instances is the acceptable format. And again, you're just briefly selling them that you're the right person to also write the article because you have 10 years of leadership experience, teaching experience. Maybe you do have, several peer-reviewed article experience as well. So hopefully that answers your question, Deborah. Thank you so much for that. Got a question from Jackie Marrow. Is there any set method to divide your dissertation into small sections for individual articles? That's another great question. Again, this depends on the guidelines and you understanding that market. If you've looked over that, let's say you're looking at let's say you're looking at an entrepreneurial magazine and you want to offer a best practice for entrepreneurial success, and you wrote a dissertation that you did some research on entrepreneurship. So when you're looking over that magazine over the last 18 months to 2 years, can you sell them your instrument in a marketable format? Because again, they're not looking for that dry, stiff research format. You'll have to sell them on their ability to use your instrument within their organization, their entrepreneurial organization, as a reader of that publication. And so you've got to really kind of zero in, kind of hone in on how important that instrument can be for the lifeblood of that entrepreneur or his or her organization. Can you divide up other sections? The literature review, it's possible you could sell a historical perspective to an entrepreneurial magazine. It's possible you could sell a historical perspective to a leadership or higher education publication. But again, you've got to tie it. I'm going to sound like a broken record, a broken CD, a broken DVD. You got to tie it to a sense of immediacy. What's happening today in the field that your literature review might possibly address? Like Winston Churchill said, those who, don't look at history are bound to repeat it, if you will, right? So you don't want to, you want to serve it up in the fashion that makes sense for the contemporary arguments or conversation that's going on today, okay? All right. Well, I think that was the last question here. We've got about 2 minutes left. Step right up. Any further questions? All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining the workshop this afternoon. Dr. Holland, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
So can you hear me? Or are we getting...
Yep, I can hear you.
I'm hearing an echo. That's okay. I just wanted to say again, thank you to everyone. And it is my hope that everyone is energized to link up with a partner and begin the process.
Yeah, and give me about probably by the end of this week, by Friday, it's my goal to send each of you communication to link you up. And then, start looking at those guidelines. Go to Barnes & Noble if Entrepreneur is the magazine that you're looking for. But make sure you look at, again, in closing, make sure you look at how much freelance work they accept. If it's 10% or less, you may not want to waste your time with that publication. So thank you very, very much for attending our workshop. We hope you found it beneficial. And we want to thank everybody. We couldn't do it without you. We're so glad that everybody attended. And I hope you guys have a happy Halloween tomorrow night. And treat yourself to getting an article published by putting in all the hard work and the background that you'll need to do your research. And have a great week ahead. Thank you, everybody. Take care.